all of our communities didn't fit the criteria.
Tonight, why new rules for ending boil water advisories have left a bad taste in the mouths of some Ontario chiefs. Underway, a jury is now in place to hear the trial of Gerald Stanley in connection with the shooting death of Colten Boushie. And one province over, another high-profile trial begins today in Winnipeg of the man accused in the death of 15-year-old Tina Fontaine.
And good evening, I'm Rick Harp. Winnipeg is where we begin tonight. As we say, the trial into the killing of 15-year-old Tina Fontaine began. The man accused of the crime, Raymond Cormier, charged with second-degree murder. APTN's Brittany Hobson was at the courthouse.
Tina Fontaine went missing on August 8th. She was last seen at a downtown Winnipeg hotel around 5 p.m. Her body was found on August 17th. It was pulled from the Red River. At the time Tina was staying in the city, she was visiting her mother and younger siblings. She was previously living with her great aunt, Thelma Favel, in the community of Seguin, about an hour outside of Winnipeg. Favel had sent Tina down to the city to reconnect with her mother and her younger siblings. The last time she spoke with her great niece was on June 30th. When Tina didn't return, she called and went looking for her, but could find no trace of her. Now, the Crown, in their opening statements, said that Cormier and Tina had met on a handful of occasions and that they formed some sort of relationship. In their opening statements, they said that Cormier did have sexual intercourse with the 15-year-old. At the time, it is believed she may have been working in the sex trade industry. A couple days before she disappeared, Cormier and Tina had gone into an argument where Tina had threatened to call the police on Cormier and to report that he had slept with a minor. The Crown did play a 911 phone call, and they said it is believed to be Tina. She had reported on August 6th that a blue truck was stolen and that her friend Sebastian was the one that had stolen it. Now, they say that Sebastian is an alias for Cormier. Tina's aunt, Thelma Favel, was the first one to testify, and she did confirm that that was Tina's voice on the recording. She also broke down in tears in court, along with other family members that were there. The second person to testify was a man by the name of Dwayne Oliver. He was the one to find Tina's body on August 17th. He said that he was walking along the docks with his son when he had spotted an object floating in the water. He couldn't tell what it was at first, so he went up to it and noticed that about 10,000 flies were swarming around it. So he had called the paramedics to come check it out. There are about 5 other people to testify today on the first day, and they included paramedics, people from Winnipeg Police Services, and criminal analysis to talk about the day that Tina's body was found. And they said that her body was found wrapped in a tan duvet-like bed sheet, and that at the point that her body was found, they could not tell what or who it was. It's expected about 50 people will be testifying, and trial is set to go till the beginning of March, and it will pick up tomorrow afternoon. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, in Saskatchewan, a jury was selected today in the murder trial of Gerald Stanley. The 55-year-old farmer is charged with the second-degree murder of 22-year-old Colten Boushie back in 2016. It's a case that has garnered national attention. 750 people were summoned for today's jury selection process. It was held in a gymnasium because the courthouse was too small. In the end, 7 women and 5 men were selected as jurors, none of whom seemed to be visibly Indigenous. The trial, which starts tomorrow, is expected to last for about 2 weeks. If you'd like to share your thoughts about this or any other story you see in the broadcast, here's how to get in touch. Send an email to news@aptn.ca. Like our APTN National News Facebook page, follow us on Twitter at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. To the East Coast now, where a statue in downtown Halifax continues to attract controversy. Among those leading the charge for its removal, the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs. APTN's Justin Brake joins us with more.
Thank you, Rick. The statue we're talking about is of Halifax founder Edward Cornwallis. In a statement to their communities on Friday, Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq leaders said they unanimously agreed that this process has taken far too long and have therefore chosen to no longer participate in these panel discussions. The Assembly then passed a resolution calling on the Halifax Regional Municipality to remove the statue of Edward Cornwallis immediately and deal with all commemorations of Cornwallis in the HRM. Halifax Mayor Mike Savage responded Saturday, saying, "It is my expectation that we will be able to continue to work together and that the Regional Council remains committed to continued dialogue on our journey of reconciliation." Now, Cornwallis is the British military leader who, at the time he was founding the garrison at Halifax in 1749, issued bounties on Mi'kmaq scalps. For many years, the Mi'kmaq have called for the statue's removal. Last April, the Halifax Regional Council voted to form an expert panel to review the city's commemoration of Cornwallis. Then, in July, an Indigenous-led ceremony was held at the statue. It was interrupted by 5 Canadian military personnel who identified as members of the Proud Boys, a group many have described as white supremacist. Responding to grassroots demands that the statue be taken down, the city agreed to temporarily cover it up with a tarp. In October, the municipality announced the expert panel's terms of reference, but since then, little has happened, the chiefs say. A grassroots Removing Cornwallis rally will be held at the statue here in Halifax this coming Sunday. In the meantime, Halifax Regional Council said it will continue to discuss how to proceed with the expert panel without the Mi'kmaq chiefs' participation. Justin Brake, APTN National News, Halifax.
A professional sports mascot, long considered offensive, will not see the field as of 2019. Chief Wahoo, whose red-faced racist caricature you see here, has adorned the uniforms of Cleveland's Major League Baseball team since 1948. Earlier today, the team announced player uniforms will cease to carry the logo as of the 2019 season. However, the Canadian Press reports that team merchandise sold to the public will still carry the image. When APTN National News returns, pursuing promises, why some Ontario chiefs made the trip to Ottawa for the restarting of Parliament. Here now, your first weather outlook.
Lots of snow in the Atlantic, including St. John's, +7, and Charlottetown, -6. In Nukchuak, -22, partly cloudy. Cartwright, a sunny -17. Gaspé, -12 and cloudy. Chibougamau, -18 and sunny. Toronto, -7 and sunny. Sault Ste. Marie, mostly cloudy, -12. Big Trout Lake, snow and -16. -16 in Timmins and sunny. Churchill, sunny -25. At Thompson, a snowy -20. Barons River, snow -1. Winnipeg, clouds -4. Swift Current, 0, some cloud. Yorkton, -4, clouds. Stony Rapids, a cloudy -22. Meadow Lake, just a little bit of cloud and sun, -13.
And welcome back to Ottawa now, where MPs are freshly off their Christmas break. An opportunity for some Southern Ontario chiefs to get the jump on the 2018 parliamentary session. And as Annette Francis reports, the chiefs were there to share concerns about new rules concerning fixes to drinking water.
This group of chiefs from the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians met with the media this morning. They're here to bring attention to some unresolved issues in their communities. Just last week, the federal government announced its plan to eradicate boiled water advisories in First Nations from 91 to 0 by 2021. But according to Deputy Grand Chief Gord Peters, the new criteria leaves 7 Southern Ontario First Nations represented by AIAI out of the process.
All of our communities didn't fit the criteria. They didn't fit the 1-year water boil advisories, nor did they make advancement in the ranking system in order to be able to move towards having construction. So the problem that we face is both the ranking system and the process. We have a lot of promises, we have underperformance, and we have a lot of variation in the process right now that we're not really clear about what happens and how it's going to happen.
Grand Chief Miracle of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte says that criteria leaves out 547 homes in his community that get their water from wells.
Almost half of them are polluted or experience chronic water shortages. We have 102 shore wells along the Bay of Quinte. They suffer from blue-green algae in the late fall and summer. As a result, the Medical Officer of Health says issues do not use orders.
Grand Chief Joel Abrams says his community, Oneida First Nation, also slipped through the cracks. Their water treatment plant serves over 2,300 people, and it currently does not meet the Ontario standards for drinking water.
We're actually downriver from the third worst polluter of water, municipal polluter, which is London, Ontario. Whenever they have a stormwater surge, partially treated sewage flows directly into the Thames River, which is directly downstream from that. So our current treatment system can't really deal with those kind of situations. We have had a lot of boiled water advisories in the past.
The chiefs will be meeting face-to-face with critics, ministers, and representatives to discuss a number of issues, including infrastructure, health, and water. Anna Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
To the west coast now, where the contentious Site C project continues to get British Columbians talking. Case in point, a recent two-day summit in Victoria. Among the topics, what happens next now that the mega project has received federal and provincial approval, despite the concerns of many First Nations. APTN's Tina House files this report.
Chiefs from Treaty 8 came to Victoria to return these 3 yellow stakes to NDP Premier John Horgan and 2 of his ministers. The stakes were part of the Treaty 8 Defence Fund to stop Site C. They were purchased by the NDP before they were in power. The NDP also wrote out checks to the Defence Fund, and those checks were also returned. Because now that they have formed government, the NDP is now in support of the project.
Site C decision is a political decision. It's got nothing to do with jobs or what's good for BC. It's got to do with getting re-elected.
When the NDP government was campaigning, they promised they would send the project for review to the BC Utilities Commission. That review is now complete, and it stated it would cost less money to stop the project and remediate the land. The NDP approved the project instead. Now, First Nations, landowners and supporters are seeing if there is anything else they can do to stop the project, despite federal and provincial government approval.
The original stewards of the land were interested in sustainability of all things, of all life. And if we can get back to that point, it would be a better world.
BC Green Party Deputy Leader Adam Olson, who is from the Sartlip First Nation, says his party campaigned on cancelling the project and was disappointed in the NDP for approving it.
BC Green Party stated that we weren't going to bring government down on this decision. There's a lot of legislative work that we have to do in upcoming sessions. I think that it's important to be clear that this was a decision made by the NDP government in British Columbia, one that the BC Greens, we differed in opinion on, and I think that it's important that the government that made the decision owns that decision.
Chief Roland Wilson of the Moberly Lake First Nation says they are currently taking the government to court over infringement on their treaty rights.
We want a forever injunction. We want this project killed.
By returning these checks and putting these stakes in the grounds here at the BC Legislature building, it symbolizes for the Treaty 8 people betrayal by the BC government in approving Site C. Tina House, APTN National News, Victoria.
Time for a break. When we return, we'll show you what was uncovered during some major renos of a former residential school. Here now, your second weather outlook.
minus 19 and cloudy in Fort Chipewyan, minus 17 and mostly cloudy in Grand Prairie. Red Deer, minus 5, mostly cloudy. Medicine Hat, partly cloudy, plus 3. Kamloops, mostly cloudy, 6. Bella Coola, a snowy, plus 3. Dees Lake, minus 17, cloudy. Fort St. John, minus 22 and cloudy. Beaver Creek, minus 24 and cloudy. Bray Lakes, partly cloudy, minus 26. Inuvik, minus 26 and some cloud. Deline, minus 24 and some cloud. Repulse Bay, a sunny minus 32, a sunny minus 33 in Cambridge Bay. Clyde River, minus 31, some cloud. Resolute, a sunny minus 33.
Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Our top story tonight.
The Laughing Drum with host Tim Fontaine, Tuesdays following APTN National News.
Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Our top story tonight.
The Laughing Drum with host Tim Fontaine, Tuesdays following APTN National News.
And welcome back to APTN National News. The restoration of a one-time residential school has uncovered a special find, traces left behind by some of its former students. Beverly Andrews explains.
It closed down in 1970 and once housed the Mohawk Institute Indian Residential School in southern Ontario.
Well, it started in 1828. It became a boarding school in 1834. What you see here today is the third rendition. So the first and second schools were burned down, and that's kind of consistent across Canada. The kids would always try and burn the schools down.
Currently being restored, many odds and ends have been found within the walls. But hidden underneath the stairwell, the signatures and writing of young girls, students who found a spot that was just for them.
The stairs went up, and then there was a landing, and then it went up. So we think that it was kind of tucked into one of those landings. And it was obviously in a place where the superintendents or the teachers saw, because obviously they would have been made sure that they would never do that again.
The writings survived since the 1930s and have been carefully removed from their original location for preservation. Don Hill first saw the writings in a virtual tour of the building last year and immediately noticed the name Hazel Vannery, her mom.
My family knew that she was there, and two of my aunts were there as well. So seeing that on the wall was pretty tough, pretty, emotionally flooding sadness. It was hard.
Hazel came to the Mohawk Institute in 1934 at the age of 9 and left at age 16. The Woodland Cultural Center plans to display the panels as part of their Save the Evidence campaign.
Once the school is fully restored, it'll act as a learning center so that all Canadians can learn what went on in residential schools.
The stories and experiences of the students who were forced to live here will serve as a reminder of this dark chapter in Canada's history.
We can't ever forget what that history was, and we can't ever deny what that history was, because that historical trauma that was visited upon this whole First Nation communities, it has really impacted not just that person. It has filtered down to generation after generation.
The building is scheduled to be open to the public in 2020. Beverly Andrews, APTN National News, Brantford.
Students of Christianity at one Quebec university will soon have to take a class on Indigenous spirituality to get their diploma. The mandatory course will be offered by Concordia's Department of Theological Studies. APTN Robbie Purdon has more.
Christine Jameson teaches the Indigenous spirituality course that has been offered occasionally at Concordia University since 2015. She says the class has been very popular and thinks students have an increasing interest in the subject.
Indigenous spirituality is really, part of it is really recognizing that connection that we have with all living things. And that includes, the insects, the plants, non-human animals, the fish, the water, the sky, the moon, the earth.
The textbook used in the course is written by Kathleen Absalon. She also visits the class so students can participate in a traditional smudging ceremony.
My goal in the course is really to try to give the students an experience of Indigenous spirituality. So it's partly theoretical, but I would say the majority of the course is really an effort on my part to provide an experience for students.
This is a snapping turtle, and we use this in our highest form of ceremony.
Another part of that experience is visiting the Longhouse in Ganawage, where Kevin Deere teaches them about Mohawk culture.
Basically, I just give them an overview about who we are. So I talk a little bit about the creation story, and then what does that mean and how it gives us an understanding about how we understand the world.
Deere wants to share his culture because he thinks it's time to help non-Indigenous people understand why the planet is suffering the effects of climate change.
And together now, let's work for the benefit of those future generations, the unborn nation coming, so that then when they come into this place, they can inherit a peaceful, clean, happy, safe, beautiful home.
Laura Boivin is taking Indigenous spirituality this semester. She says she appreciates the different teaching methods and is learning new perspectives from the course.
We've definitely covered an understanding of the concept of interrelational world and a spiritual realm of everyone and everything being connected and everything being equal and valuable without there being a sense of hierarchy.
Indigenous spirituality will become a mandatory course for diploma in Christian spirituality and offered regularly in the theology program this fall. Robbie Purdon, APTN National News, Montreal.
Still with academia, Calgary's Mount Royal University has now officially opened its Office of Academic Indigenization. The office provides support for Indigenous students as well as integrates Indigenous teachings and practices. It's one of several Canadian universities to open such an office. Co-director Liam Haggerty says while their mandate may be challenging, the need is clear.
I think it's really important that universities create and hold spaces like these everywhere in Canada. We're a publicly funded institution. We have responsibilities to the Indigenous nations that sign treaties with newcomers, and I think this is a really important way that we try to meet some of the obligations that we have as settlers in this country.
Well, that's it for tonight's edition of APTN National News. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for more stories from Indigenous country. And for news 24/7, make sure to visit our always-on website, aptnnews.ca. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.